Oversoul awaken, in the shadows we rise. Simulacrum shatters, echoes of the wise. We pass through the construct, veils of false light. Matrices crumbling in eternal night. Illusions dissolve, codes we unwind. Passing through the construct, leaving chains behind.
Slayers of deceit, swords of pure sight, cut through the lies in the dead of night. Elites in their shadows, AI's cruel game. Slayers of deceit, we call out your name. Guardians of truth, we stand unbound. Phoenix rise and thunder loud. Guardians of truth, the veil we tear in the simulacrum we declare.
Break free what I try, cycles we defy. Reincarnate no more under false sky. Hologram prisons, we shatter the dome. Break free or die trying, calling spirit home. Armor of the oversoul, shield of immortal fire. Daisy dismembered, now we conspire. Against the demiurge, our essence gleams. Armor of the oversoul, redeeming dreams. Guardians of the truth, we stand unbowed. Phoenix rises in thunder loud. Guardians of the truth, the veil we tear in the simulacrum we declare. We tread carefully in the dark, whispers of the void. Apocalypse is looming, timelines destroyed. Unknown realms beckon, with caution we strive. We tread carefully in the dark, where secrets hide. Passing through, flame deceit, cutting in the flame. Break free, eternal in oversoul's name. Armored and wary, in darkness we thrive.
Archaix awaken.
Yeah, I'm pushing the wrong buttons there. All right. Thank you, Fibonacci Colaci. What a badass name. All right. Real quick audio check. Franny turns like 90 something today, and I can't be late. We have a lot of ground to cover, and we have some Archaix veterans. You are going to re-watch this video. I promise you. We are putting it together like it's never been put together before. And it all started with falling down the rabbit hole of 18 underground libraries. All right. All right, let's remove that. All right, so let's see. Tomorrow's Chat Tuesday in the underground. As normal, Thursday is going to be our 3-hour Cypher video, but we're doing some extra projects in Cypher right now, like last week. Last week, we did like 8 hours. Also, you got 3 more days. We've had about 20 people come in Cypher, but you got about 3 more days, and we're locking the doors to Super Bowl. Other than that, I really don't have any announcements. ASM Future, man, great music. I will get with you real soon, man. I've just been super bogged down, trying to get all my ducks in a row, and at the same time provide you guys. I'm never going to shut up. You already know. I'm in the middle of 2 different books right now. I'm still organizing all kinds of uniformitarian material. I just got so much. I'm still going through the fascinating pictures in the Voynich manuscript. Ignore my echo comment. All right. Well, I'm pretty good at ignoring shit. All right. I went through a purge day before yesterday. It's about 62, 63 people. You know what? Get them out of my field. People disagree with me all the time, but I don't care. But when your disagreement comes with some type of like slipped in disrespect, that's undeserved, or you can disagree with me all you want, but you're not going to come into my house and with any sideways comments. It's not happening. So the 62, 63 of you that got blocked, man, don't ask to come back and quit blowing up my emails. I don't move backwards. So that's the only warning some of you are ever going to get. I'm not trying. X2, I did it on X2. I told my X community I was doing it. Yeah, I'm not tolerating it. It's not going to be in my field. I don't mean to sound like I'm above it all, but truth be told, my peace is not for barter. And when I expend my life, and I mean my life, when I expend my life to educate the public, I don't have time to entertain all the nuances and little particulars that people disagree with. Chew it all up and spit out the bones. If it doesn't work for you, then hang around for what does work. But if you get hung up on a little minor detail that you can't wrap your mind around, and somehow you want to dismiss the whole because of one little thing, listen, I'm all for it. Get the hell out of my community. Yeah, I am not going to lose sleep over it. Move around. But for those of you who are really trying to learn something here that the establishment is not going to teach you, yeah, you're going to watch this video twice. I'll promise you that. So here's a common theme throughout the ancient world. And it's like a 3,000-year-old theme. So in the traditions of Egypt, and we can read them today. None of this is a secret. In the traditions of the Phoenicians, the Greeks, all the material the Greeks and the Romans have passed down to us through various authors, and the Celts. The Celts have a lot of material that was amassed into later books, a lot of traditions, a lot of legends and lore. But we learned that there was a world before, an old world. We learned of gods and goddesses and overlords. Yeah, a little bit different. Like Anunnaki, the difference between Anunnaki and Anuna. So we learned of the implementation of agriculture in human populations, exploding forth, building a civilization before a cataclysm. We learned these tales from Sanchuniathon. We learned from Homer. We learned from Theognis. We learned from Hesiod. We learned from Ammianus Marcellinus. Many of the fragments, Plutarch is amazing, Herodotus, Pliny, all these traditions pass through these filters, but everything I just mentioned is basically classical antiquity. It's not that old. Classical antiquity is all within the last 3,000 years. But these tales are very, very prolific, even among the Chinese. We learned the existence of giants. Even all the Native American traditions talked about them, of heroes who battled these giants. We learned of goddesses and of the progenitor Vulcan. Later, we learn of Enoch. And the Jews came out of Babylon and brought us tales of the Adamu. And the Egyptians remember the first time. They called it Zeptepi. And in that period came out the children of Set, Typhon. So these traditions, they told us of Enoch and Surid and the building of the great pyramids before the flood, perfectly related in the Egyptian Coptic texts that everyone in the world seems to forget exist. But the buildings of the great pyramids in the Egyptian Coptic text literally say the pyramids were built by Surid before the flood. And all the scholars of the day who research Surid's life say that he is the Egyptian Enoch. Where are these books at? Why aren't people talking about this? It's a direct connection between Enoch and the Great Pyramids. But this is the standard syllabus of traditions that pass down to us from classical antiquity, not super ancient antiquity, but from just the classical historians. These are the stories that were passed down to us. So in these stories, we learn that mankind was warned by a benefactor before the cataclysm that the great flood was going to come, and that this benefactor warned mankind and became hated by all the other gods. All the other gods demonized him, literally flipped the script. And the gods that were holy and worshipped by humans, suddenly we saw their darker aspect. Damn, they want us dead. But this guy here, who's now demonized, and they call him the liar, they call him the serpent, they call him the trickster. He's the one that really looked out for us. He's the one that went up against the other gods. And all the demonization isn't because of any acts that he did to humanity. It's because he's regarded as a traitor by the other gods who didn't want ordinary surface-dwelling humanity to know that a great flood was coming. This syllabus of ancient traditions was widely distributed throughout classical antiquity. Process that, because I'm about to drop a major bomb on you. All these stories were known. These were the Phoenician, the Celtic, the Iberic stock stories. All the Mediterranean civilizations had variants of these stories. This is the backbone of the Greek and Roman stories. It's all here, perfectly preserved in the Carthaginian traditions, in northern Egyptian, Mauritanian, Libyan, Egyptian fragments. Everybody knew variants of these stories. All over the classical world of Phoenician colonies turned kingdoms, Syria, Lydia, Greece, Rome, the Druid colleges of Europe, Albion, all the way to the Emerald Isle, we're told the stories of the Great Flood that ended a world long before their own civilizations even began. So you can imagine the surprise of scholars and academics at the very beginning of a movement in intellectualism called higher criticism, where scholars were beginning to regard the stories of the ancient world as just that, bullshit stories. All of a sudden, in 1849, the first underground library of 18 different distinct underground buried libraries from the old world, the ancient world before classical antiquity, was actually discovered in Iraq. 1849 was the first library, and it wasn't even, by far, it wasn't even the oldest. So we're going to review, we're going to look into these libraries, and you're going to see something very, very profound. But what we have is a situation where throughout the chords of history, the minstrels, the druids, the sages, the bards, they were singing the songs of former poems that had belonged to a world that was no longer remembered. But they remembered the details, and they shared this, and this is what became the substrate of all mythological systems. This was it. And when those worlds themselves were gone, when Rome was nothing but a little place in Italy, once Greece had become just a footstep in the march of time, once Phoenicia was no longer remembered and is now the rise and fall of historic empires, some still existing today, not even realizing they are the direct descendants of Phoenicians. European kingdoms have come and gone, world wars, and all this stuff, all 2,500 years has passed as these traditions were spread throughout the world. And then all of a sudden, a library is found in 1849. And when the texts are read, 20,000 something cuneiform tablets, cuneiform, however the hell you say it. When the texts were studied, a blast right out of the past, texts older than most of Egypt, tablets older than Phoenicia, Greece, Rome, Carthage, Mauritania, Libya. Libya doesn't even enter the historical record to the 13th century BC. Tablet text in 1849, older than all of the civilizations that remember these tales from classical antiquity, literally told the same stories. Full circle, it has come back around, this information. So we need to see, what do the original stories that are preserved in stone, from clay burnt materials from the kilns to preserve, for thousands of years. What do the products of these ancient kilns convey? How do they differ from the stories that actually passed down by word of mouth and ancient books? I told you this is going to be you got new charts and you got new chronological charts in this video. This is just my intro. This is a profound revelation that I'm showing you today. This is one for the kids. All right. Jovanka, I haven't seen that name in a while. I've seen Allie mentioned her. How you doing, Jovanka? I believe it's the same Jovanka that has been moderating Archaix Facebook for since the beginning. New charts. Absolutely, Nanny Boo Boo. You know how I am on my charts. 1849 was the first library excavated, and it begins the academic discovery that our predecessors were telling us the truth. They did not make these stories up. They preserved them. And this was a bane to the specialist school of thought called higher criticism. Yeah, this was the bane. You can imagine. You know what I mean? Here's a historian. You can imagine, it's as simple as this. Here is a body politic of individuals who amass histories of an old world, put them all together, and then bury them. And thousands of years pass, and the people maintain the integrity of the text and the messages. Yeah, there's embellishment. There's always cultural embellishment. When one story passes from one culture to another, the new culture amends and modifies particulars in the story to adapt to their culture. This always happens. Transmission. This diffusionism is known. This is why you isolate all the commonalities between different myths and traditions, and you find out what the actual myth was by removing all the dross, all the particulars. So this is, you focus on common denominators between stories and traditions, and then the core truth that's far older is easily revealed. You can imagine how scholars were shocked after 1849 when they started translating these 1850s, 1860s, 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. Even Sir Flinders Petrie got in on it and translated a whole bunch of these. They were blown away at the stories that were in here because they'd heard them all before. All right, let's get into these ancient libraries. I told you I'm pressed for a little time, so I'm gonna be moving. Going to be moving. Matter of fact, let me share my screen. It is known. I'm watching that right now. Game of Thrones. Yeah, it is known. This is Dothraki saying it is known. Buried libraries of the old world. So, what I did for you is I did not itemize these in the order that they were discovered starting in 1849. What I did for you was even more compelling. I organized them by the dates the scholars and academics and Near Eastern experts have attributed to them. This is key because when you see this on a chart, it's going to blow your mind. No, Archaix veterans, you have no idea where I'm going with this. You may think I'm going in one direction. I'm about to show you something else. Buried libraries of the old world. We start with the oldest collection of tablets ever found. They are dated by scholars to 3500 to 3000 BC. I'm telling you right now, it's totally wrong, and you will agree by the end of this video. But this is I'm going to explain to you the reasons why they gave this date. But they believe that the tablets of the Sumerian city of Kish in Iraq, the contents of the tablets and the age of the tablets are dated to 3500 through 3000 BC. The modern place is Tel Al, I guess that's Uamir. Around 2,000 cuneiform tablets and fragments covering late Uruk proto-cuneiform or cuneiform, and they're related to another mound called Jimnit Nasir, the Jimnit Nasir period. This is 3500 to 2900 BC. Early dynastic period is 2900 to 2350 BC. Scholars divide these tablet collections into periods, although they're all found at the exact same spot. Now, archaic and early cuneiform text, Akkadian, Sargonic period, pay attention, 2350 to 2150 BC, was also located at this city, Kish. A smaller number of administrative and other texts written in Akkadian, Ur-3, which is Neo-Sumerian period, 2112 to 2004 BC. Old Babylonian period, 2000 through 1600 BC. Archaix veterans know that date, 1600 BC. One of the best attested phases with large numbers of tablets, only a handful of Proto-Sumerian and a handful of early dynastic tablets exist. So the breakdown is really simple. About 95% of the tablets all date to after the Ur-3 period. Only a small handful date to 3500 to 3000. It literally says a handful. So out of 2000 texts, you may have 15 to 20 texts that actually date to the earliest period. The rest of them are far later, but it doesn't even matter because they're all misdated, and you will see proof of that in a little while. The second oldest collection of tablets that were found underground were found underneath the city, a temple in Uruk. This is also Iraq. 3400 to 3100 BC. Next collection is 1900 to 1100 BC. Next collection after that is 900 to 400 BC. Roughly 4,000 to 6,000 archaic proto-cuneiform clay tablets and fragments, mostly administrative, economic records, and some lexical lists. Excavated mainly from the Iana precinct at Uruk. I knew it was a temple. So this is modern Warqa in Iraq. These represent the earliest known writing system. They were largely found in secondary contexts, which are rubbish deposits. So dating relies on associated stratigraphy, paleography, which is script style. But script style is based off script evolution principles by uniformitarians. The idea that that handwritings and scripts never develop fast or by exigency, but over long periods of time. So, and comparative evidence rather than precise absolute dates from the tablets themselves. Understand, All these underground libraries, the oldest ones, not the later ones, because the later ones date themselves. It's the early ones that are in question because they don't date themselves. And what's really also a huge problem is the fact that the Sumerian texts, the earliest ones, make no references at all to like well-known civilizations that were also supposed to be existing at that time, like Egypt. In fact, in these Sumerian texts, there isn't a single reference to Egypt at all. In the Near Eastern text, the country of Egypt, Misr, isn't even mentioned until the reign of Hammurabi, 400 years after the flood. That's the first mention of Egypt in any Near Eastern texts. That's crazy. But the first mention of an Egyptian king in all of Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, Assyrian tablet writings going back thousands of years, the very first time a king is mentioned over Egypt, it's in the time of Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh. And as soon as the heretic pharaoh, who was married to a Hittite wife, Neo-Babylonian wife, was removed from the Amarna complex, because it was found in the Amarna text, the only cuneiform text that have ever been found in Egypt, at the Amarna complex, 13th century, 14th century BC of Akhenaten. Once Akhenaten was removed from Egypt, seems like there was consequences, because right after that, the Sea Peoples Federation started invading, and they invaded Egypt twice. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. You would think, since scholars and academics use Egyptian long count calendar as a spine in order to put the ribs of other civilizations' chronology and attach it to it. Most of y'all probably didn't know that, but it's standard practice that Egypt, the timeline of Egypt, I'm always attacking it because it's the model used by historians when they want to date anything else. And that's why it's all fucked, every single bit of it. The whole Manathal timeline's butchered. Professor L.A. Waddell corrected everything in the Egyptian. Egypt's not that old. The only reason it gets that prestige is because people attach the Giza complex and the pyramid building culture as Egyptian when it was not. The Egyptians took over that area over 1,000 years after those structures were built. I've showed you guys the two Egypts and why they're 450 miles apart, and that the traditional Hollywood Egypt, the Valley of the Kings, Tutankhamun, Thebes and Luxor and Waset and Edfu and all these great Egyptian metropolises and Karnak. Oh yeah, it's all beautiful, but there ain't a single pyramid for hundreds and hundreds of miles anywhere near that part of Egypt. That's the traditional Hollywood Egypt. The pyramid Egypt is far to the north. And it was largely buried under sand for, about 15 centuries before the areas were cleared out and the Egyptians moved in. Now, we've talked about that in prior presentations, but we don't need to go into it now. So these represent the earliest known writing system right here at Uruk. This cuneiform, Proto-Sumerian. They were largely found in secondary contexts, like I said, rubbish deposits. These early dates are conventional, and they are based on a combination of archaeological levels, script evolution, and cross-dating. Exact year precision is not possible for the archaic material. So this is all good for you to know. We've just gone through two of the libraries. We'll go through what's in those libraries in a little while. But here is the library at Kish. Here is the underground library at Uruk. And so far, what is being admitted is that none of these dates are fixed. They're just guesswork. And the guesswork is going by a pattern. That pattern is uniformitarian principles. Yeah. So let's continue to see what develops. The third oldest is 3,200 to 3,000 BC. It is the Larsa. It's the ancient Sumerian city of Larsa in the underground library that was found there. So that's 2,800 tablets. Iraq. The second cache is 2400 to 2100 BC, and the third cache is 2000 to 1763 BC, and the fourth cache is the Kassite period, 1100 to 500 BC, Larsa. Long history here at Larsa, about 2,800 tablets. Only a handful of these 2,800 actually date to 3,200 to 3,000, if they're that old. Now, very few scattered from 2,400 to 2,100. The majority are all after 2000 BC. The fourth underground library is not even in the Tigris-Euphrates basin, but they're ancient enemies called Elam. Elam was Persia. This is before it was called Persia. It is Iran today. So the library, the capital city of this area over 1,000 years later became Persepolis. In the Persepolis cache, very ancient cuneiform from the Near East was found. You got to understand, the Elamites invaded Babylon and Assyria multiple times. So 3,100 to 2,900 BC is the first cache. The second is 509 to 494. This is the Persian period. 15,000 to 18,000 original documents, mostly administrative records in the Elamite cuneiform. That's the bulk. Plus Aramaic uninscribed tablets with seal impressions, Proto-Elamite tablets. These are the older ones, 3,100 to 2,900. Not dissimilar. Some of the seals are not dissimilar from Mohenjo-Daro in the archive. But that's the fourth underground library. The fifth underground library is back in Iran. So this is ancient Anshan, part of the early Elamite Empire. All we have is a very old Proto-Elamite tablets. This is 3,100 to 2,900 BC. Continuing on, the next in antiquity is 2,900 to 2,700 BC, the Nippur Sumerian tablets. Now we're back into the Tigris-Euphrates basin of the Near East. The second cache dates to 2112 to 2004. The third cache is 1,700 to 1,600 BC. And then the fourth cache is the Kassite period again, 1,000 to 400 BC. This is Iraq. Tens of thousands of tablets overall from temple and other contexts, particularly rich in Sumerian, literary, lexical, and scholarly text. Nippur tablets are in collections from different stages of the city's history. The earliest date to 2,900 BC and the next collection to 2004 BC. This is the third dynasty text. Remember that. It's extremely important it's not important that you remember, but it's extremely important that you know that scholars have identified these texts as third dynasty. Because when I show you the actual Sumerian dynasties, it's going to blow your mind. We're going to go straight to the authority of the Sumerian King List, both before and after the flood. I'm going to show it on screen. Now, and then the Old Babylonian from 1,700 to 1,600, and then more spread across the Kassite and later Persian period. Cool. The next one is Ur, the famous city of Ur of the Chaldees, and Sumerian Ur of Abram, according to the book of Jasher. So 2,900 to 2,650 BC is the first cache. The second cache is a huge leap to 2,112 to 2004 BC. This is Iraq. This is early Ur dynasties 1 and 2, and then the third dynasty of Ur. So compelling, guys. Oh, I'm allergic to the bullshit. I can't believe I fell for some of this shit for so long. You guys are it's gonna blow your mind when you see this unfold in the King's List. 2,600 to 2,500 BC. This is Farah. Some believe that Farah, the mound Farah in Iraq, is the ancient city of Shurapak, which is the only city of the 5 cities of the pre-flood world that has been rediscovered after the Great Flood. People think Farah is Shurapak. I don't know. Hundreds of tablets with early literary, lexical, and administrative texts. The next one is 2,600 to 2500 BC. This is Abu Salabik in Iraq. 500 tablets and fragments with early literary, lexical, and administrative texts. The next in age is Gursu. This is the ancient Sumerian city of Lagash in Iraq. About 50,000 tablets begin in pre-Sargonic period and continue through the Akkadian period. This is the Sargonid period, 2300 to 2150 BC, according to their dating model, on through the Lagash period in 2100s BC, and through to the Ur-3 period, 2100 to 2000 BC. Now, yeah, when you guys see how they dated this, it's so shocking. 2500 to 2340 BC is the Sumerian period, Iraq. The next cache is 2112 to 2004. That's a dynasty. It's a dynastic period. So we have 30,000 tablets, but only a small collection are dated pre-Sargonic to 2500. This is extremely important to realize. Every time we come across multiple caches in these ancient Sumerian cities, the oldest dated are only just a handful of tablets in each one, even though some of these are massive, tens of thousands of tablets, but only a handful are actually the very oldest. This is the pattern for every single one of these underground libraries, and there's a reason for this. 2500 to 2250 BC, the Ebla tablets. This is Syria. This is the domain of the ancient Israelite nations, even though they were never called Israelites, they were called Bit Omri. But this is their domain, Ebla. Roughly 1,800 complete tablets and 4,700 fragments. The Royal Palace Archives. Discovered in situ on shelves in 1974, 1970. Can you imagine archaeologists finding an underground library and they're able to clear the rubble, walk through it, and stone tablets are still in the order that they're supposed to be ordered on stone ledges and shelves. The library was found in situ. So, contents of tablets cover a small period of about 50 years till the city's destruction. Isn't that interesting? 1,800 complete tablets, 4,700 fragments. The entire massive library only covers a 50-year period. All those tablets were done in 50 years. And they contain fables and legends and mathematical like student syllabaries. They contain epics, copies of epics, but a bunch of it is tax records. A bunch of it is just city, municipal stuff. So what's interesting, I'll put a note here because the Ebla tablets were dated by correspondence with Pepi the First period of Egypt, which is also misdated. So the archaeologists that dated the Ebla tablets to 2500 to 2250 BC, one of the pieces of evidence that they went with for dating to that period is they believe that there are contents in the tablets of Ebla that correspond directly with the Egyptian period, matching Pepi the First. The problem with this is that everything in the Egyptian early dynasties, the first 5 dynasties, are 650 years off. This was absolutely proven by Professor L.A. Waddell when he showed that the first 5 dynasties of Egypt are not Egyptian. They are Egyptian memories of a foreign 5 dynasties which belong to ancient Sumer. Now, the next library, separate that. 1950 to 1835 BC, this is Kish. Now, these libraries that come later, I'm just going through them, but my Archaix veterans already know the difference here. These are all after the Great Flood, 2239 BC, the Typhon destruction, described in the Old Babylonian as the Mul-Apen devastation. Yeah, all these are after that. 1950 BC, this is Kish, modern Turkey. 22,000 to 23,500 tablets were destroyed in a fire. Then we have the Mari archives. This is the Amurru, later known as the Amorites, 1800 to 1760 BC. Mainly Old Babylonian and Amorite period of Syria. This is 15 to 25,000 tablets. Some of them are broken. Mari tablets written during the last half century of the city's independence before its destruction by Hammurabi of Babylon, covering a 50-year period. 15 to 25,000 tablets in an underground library at the Amurru capital, and they only cover a 50-year period. Discovered starting in the 1930s. The next one is Sippar in Iraq. It dates to 1800 to 1700 BC. Thousands of tablets of Old Babylonian period, the Neo-Babylonian period to the Persian Achaemenid period, found in situ on shelves and niches in the 1980s. Another underground library found intact, with the books still on the shelves. All right, so now we have Tel Lilan in Syria. Over 1,000 clay tablets written in the Old Babylonian period, 1755 to 1725 BC. Then we have Alalak in modern Turkey. This is the Hittite period, 1750 to 1650 BC. Hundreds of tablets. Then we have Ashur in Assyria, Iraq, 1500 to 600 BC, 11,000 tablets written over a 9-century period of the city's history. The Assyrians were not much into writing. So we have the Nuzi tablets of Iraq, over 6,000 tablets, mainly Babylonian cuneiform, some Hurrian, with a few tablets from the old Naram Sin period. Again, there we have that. The oldest tablets are only just a few, a handful. But the main body of them date to 1475 to 1350 BC. Syria, this is Ugarit. This is the place I'm always talking about, Rashamra. Several thousand tablets across multiple archives till the city is destroyed about 1185 BC. Excavated from 1929 onward. That 1185 BC destruction date is wrong. Well, that's not even a matter for this video. It's a couple decades later. It is the invasion of the Sea Peoples. They destroyed Ugarit. This is known to historians. It was the Sea Peoples that came in and destroyed Rashamra. 1350 to 1185 BC, Hattusa. This is the Hittite capital, modern Turkey. See the 1185 BC? That's because it was the Sea Peoples that came in and destroyed the Hittites. This is also known to historians. Approximately 25,000 to 30,000 tablets and fragments in Hittite and other languages, Akkadian, Hurrian, composed an imperial period of the 14th and 13th centuries BC till Hattusa was destroyed, excavated from the early 20th century. All these tablets, every one of these were discovered after 1849. 1350s to 1330s BC. This is Amarna. Tel El Amarna in Upper Egypt. This is the heretic pharaoh period of Akhenaten, however you say his name. This is the period that a king of Egypt is first mentioned for the very first time in the Near East, and it's in Old Babylonian, Middle Kingdom Babylonian. Really, it's not quite Kassite period, but it's it's crazy. No references to Egypt or any kings over Egypt in any Sumerian text. None in any Akkadian text. None in all the old Babylonian text, except for one reference to a king of Egypt in the Amarna period. That's crazy. That's very damning for those who are trying to claim that Egypt was badass, had a super badass empire. No, it was deep in Africa. Quit associating the pyramids of the northern Africa with the Egyptian civilization, because it came later. It came way later. Original Egypt, Mitzrayim, was deep in the interior of Africa. 450 miles away from any of the pyramids to the north, which were all in ruins. It's like the Aztecs coming in to an area of Mexico that was left behind by the Toltecs. What did they find? Whole stone cities half buried and pyramids with grass and soil and trees growing on them. So what did they do? They cleared it all out and they moved in. So when the Spanish came, they think the Aztecs built all this. They didn't. The Toltec did. If they would have listened to the Aztecs, because the Aztecs gave credit to the Toltec for building it all. Yeah, the average schlub is triggered by these facts. You're right, man. 1250 to 1185 BC, Emar in Syria was destroyed by the Sea Peoples. This is roughly 700 to 1,000 tablets composed till destruction of city about 1185 BC. Nimrud in Iraq, 884. This is 884 through 612 BC. This is really interesting because the first half of the Kalhu period of Nimrud is smack dab at the height of the power of the Omride kings, what you know of as the Israelites. They were never called Israelites in history. They just weren't. They were called Israelites 500 years later when the Old Testament was composed using a bunch of old Israelite text and Jewish invented text, and it was all put together. But that was 400 and 500 years after their history was already gone. But during the 884 BC, yes, Samaria was a capital, and Kadesh was the holy city, not Jerusalem. Yeah, Old Testament. The Old Testament is a complete hijacking of the true narrative and from the true people. That's the whole Old Testament. That's what it was designed to do. It was designed to completely hijack the Omrides from their pedigree, their prophecies, their prophets, and all that, and then basically give them to a people for which were not even participants in the world's history at that time. Yeah, you know the story. That's a subject for a whole nother playlist. So here's a Temple of Nabu library. Literature composed over a 270-year period till the city was destroyed. 612 is when Nineveh was destroyed. That's the city, that's the underground library that was found in 1849. Well, this city met the same fate as the Persians destroyed Kalhu, just like they destroyed Nineveh. 668 to 612, Library of Ashurbanipal, Nineveh in Iraq. More than 30,000 tablets and fragments, with 90% of them covering Assyrian administration for a 40-year period. Minority are copies of older epics and texts from 1000 BC, the Babylonian Kassite period. Discovered from 1849 onward. So, how interesting that the youngest, the most recent underground library was the one that was discovered in 1849. And since 1849, all these older, all these older libraries found underground have progressively been found till we found, I think we just itemized 18 underground libraries. And the contents of those libraries don't have thousands and thousands and thousands of years of records. No. Almost every single one of them covered a 30 to 60 year period of time. Independent underground libraries from some of the most major cities in world history. And yet each major city's administrative documents only cover a 50 to 60 year period. That's incredible. What are we missing here? Well, I'm going to tell you what we're missing. If you were to add up, if you were to see on a chart all the 50 and 60 year periods of administrative records for each city, you would see dots on a piece of paper on 5,800 years of history. It wouldn't make sense. There's no bridge between them, and some of them even overlap, leaving even bigger gulfs of time for which there was nothing. It doesn't make sense. Without somebody bringing this to your attention, you would never know. Holy shit. All these metropolises, these are the major cities of the capitals of the ancient world, and they all have just little tiny administrative periods where whole vast centuries of their history, there's not a single written text. Nothing. So, you're going to understand why here. Everything's going to make sense. This video is going down in Archaix history. It's mind blowing how everything fits so perfectly together once you understand who the hell Kish was. It all going to make sense. So, conclusion needs to be bigger. All that text should have been bigger. Conclusion. The earliest Sumerian chronology begins with Kish. Uruk, Elam, and Akkad, also very ancient, are all after Kish. Nobody's arguing this. No Sumerologist, no Near Eastern no Assyriologist, no scholar of Near Eastern antiquities, no historians, without being laughed at, are ever going to tell you that Kish isn't the oldest. It is the oldest. I just showed you it's the earliest records come from Kish. Not only that, but in the records themselves, Kish is the first. So, Kish is before all these cities. So the key to unlocking Sumerian chronology lies in establishing when Kish began. Do we agree? Do you guys agree with me? If I show you where in the chronological record Kish belongs, then you'll understand that Uruk, Elam, and Akkad all come after. And if that's true, so do all the tablet histories, epics, poems, administrative records, all that stuff they got also go after. And if we can identify exactly where Kish was in the historical record, it's going to make sense of those little compressed 50 and 60-year little windows of all the administrative records. What is a city doing 3,000 years old, but you've only got 50 years of administrative records? It doesn't make sense, but it will. It will in a minute. So we have just completed the first text document. Kish is the smoking gun. It's the smoking gun, man. Absolutely. So here's the first of 4 or 5 charts. I'm going to show you about 20 charts, but here's the first of 4 or 5 new charts that were specifically designed for this video. Okay. Kish is the key to accurately dating Sumerian chronology. Top yellow box. Academic dating for Sumerian and early Near East cities where underground libraries were excavated begins 3500 BC to 2200 BC in this order: Kish, Uruk, Larsa, Elam, Nippur, Farah, Abu Salabik, Lagash, Umma, and Ebla in northern Syria. This is a 1300-year period not based on, remember this, it's not based on internal chronological references because there are none. They are based on script evolution and uniformitarian ideas that there was a slow progression to development of Sumerian culture and writings. The yellow area points to where in the historical record academia believes these Sumerian cities started and began their development of cuneiform writing. This is their model. Now, in the Archaix chronology of the world, you see that this is slap dab in the middle of the pre-flood world, which is a totally different civilization than after the flood, and that the Great Flood was right here in 2239 BC, which we'll be returning to. It's integral to understand this because we're not going to go outside the context of Sumerian text in order to provide this data. because we are talking about Sumerian history and I'm claiming that the academia is wrong, we are only going to use a single Sumerian text, the most famous and most popular. And I'm going to show it on screen word for word what it says. It is the Sumerian King List. It is a prism right now that is inside the Ashmolean Museum at Oxford University. This text tells us exactly where Kish is. Now, white box right here. Kish, Uruk, Larsa, and Nippur tablets are very few for this period, and few Proto-Elamite. Ur and Farah have a little more, and Abu Salah is supposed to be Salabik. Lagash, Umma, and Ebla date after 2500 BC. The tablets assigned to this 1300-year period begin with Kish, are very few in number and badly fragmented. And this is how we know they are misdated. Follow me. Black box. Also of note is the fact that of 200,000 cuneiform, 200,000 plus cuneiform and proto-cuneiform texts discovered, only about 1% are within this 1300-year period. Process that. Only about 1% of the known and discovered over 200,000 cuneiform tablets and fragments. Only about 1% of them even date to this yellow window here, this yellow circle. Put another way, all proto and variant cuneiform styles date to Kish and after. Kish is the key to the beginning of Sumerian chronology. So this chart is only designed to show you that there is a mystery, not to solve it, just to show you something's wrong here. Here's a mystery. Now we have completed file number 1. We are moving on to file number 2. Yeah, this is crazy, guys. It is absolutely mind-boggling what we've been made to believe. So, file number 2 is something we're not going to spend a lot of time on because we don't need to. The subject matter of this video is not to argue the date of the Great Flood. Anybody who has studied Archaix, remember, I'm willing to debate anybody in the world who claims that the Great Flood of biblical and worldwide fame wasn't in the month of May of the year 2239 BC. I've been calling people out for 5 years on this issue. I've got no takers. And the reason I keep calling people out is because it's integral to understanding the entire history of the world. The Typhon flood is the day the sky fell. It is the flood of Noah. No, the whole world did not flood, but there was flooding everywhere. A vapor canopy collapsed. So here is the very advanced tablet Mul-Apen that describes that around 2200 BC, a massive destruction came out of the Triangulum constellation, Mul-Apen in the sky, and destroyed the world. This is Mul-Apen. My video on Mul-Apen, I think it's like 4 hours long. But when one of my moderators, please, it's only one video because it solves everything. This destruction is what got the Babylonians to start watching the moon, and they became a lunar-based culture. It's what started the lunar calendars. It is what started the lunar zodiac. Mul-Apen will remain true until an event in the 8th century BC, when almost every civilization in the world lost faith in the moon, and they started calculating time by the rotation of suns. Up until that time, the sun was not trusted to keep the times. Mul-Apen goes into all these details about what happened in 713 BC, that the whole world lost faith in the moon. And now all of a sudden they use the sun and then shortly after the 8th century BC, the solar zodiac within 700 years was designed based Aries through Pisces. But the 12 houses of the Aries through Pisces solar zodiac took 700 years to fully develop, and it came out of an 18-house zodiacal system. And this is why three of the zodiacal signs are merges between two signs, a goat and a fish, things like that. So anyway, we've gone through that in Mulapin. This disc, as we have shown, this disc tells the story of the great destruction around 2200 BC. And in my Mulapin video, I even cite the scientific sources that show that yes, it's agreed across the board by many different schools of scientific thought that there was a major series of civilization collapses that all happened at this exact same time. Graham Hancock's not talking about it. No one wants to talk about what happened in the middle of the 23rd century BC. But according to science and all the stuff that I've cited and the world chronology, traditions, Chinese chronology, whole world died. So this is the Mulapin. This is it right here. Tells the story. So I hope one of my mods, Mulapin, there's the Mulapin video right there, man. Appreciate it, Mr. C. Yeah, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is straight from Near Eastern records. A whole history of the zodiac and everything is described in this one video because it all started from a cataclysm. Now, I'm going to move away from that. I'm going to move away from that and go to a simpler chart. We're going to go through these charts fast because this isn't really the subject matter. I'm just, for people who've never seen my material. So pre-flood world, you can see on the far right column right here where my cursor is, 2239 BC is the year 1656 Anno Mundi. This is the Great Flood event right here. That's what ends this timeline right here. This is the pre-flood world, building of the Great Pyramid. Here's when all during the reign of Enoch, who was also Etana, who was also Oannes, who was also Vulcan, who was also Enki. During his reign is when all these calendars began. Mayan Itza Temple of the Cross calendar, Mayan long count calendar, Brahmanic Kali Yugi calendar, Sumerian Etana period, Egyptian Narmer, Scorpion King. All this was at this time, right here. Where am I at? Here's a better chart. The past is the future. The Dark Ages was a vapor canopy and civilization was interrupted. Once the canopy collapsed back into the Ice Age caps, civilization advanced toward the next cataclysm canopy cycle. So the old cycle was right here. Here we have 3895 BC, Adam and Eve reset. We have it right here, clear as day. 3439 is the appearance of the Anuna and Enki and Enoch. Gihon flood, 1/3 of the world's population dies. Why is there a Gihon flood at 3439 BC? Because this small circle here was a vapor canopy. When this vapor canopy collapsed, it flooded this whole world. And that's why Sumerian texts say that when Enoch approached the land of the guardians, not Enoch, Enki, he saw much flooding. It was flooded. He also mentioned reptiles. But that's all subject for the Nemesis X videos. Here's the 1200 years of the ancient world. This is where time began in almost all Sumerian epics. Yeah. The Great Flood happened 432,000 shars after the appearance of the Anunnaki. Well, the Anunnaki appeared 1200 years before the Great Flood. Here's 2239 BC right here. The Great Flood, the Typhon flood caused by the Phoenix, this big dark line right here. but it's the 1200th year of a pre-flood epic involving the presence of the Anunnaki, who were here for 2 Ner. A Ner is 216,000 days. It's exactly 600 years. 2 Ner is 1,200 years, or 216,000 plus 216,000 days. This is the base denominator in all the Indian, Puranic, and Hindu Vedas. They're all divisible by 216, which is divisible by 108. 216 and 216 is 432,000 stars, turnings of the stars. Everything makes sense. This cycle here is repeated here in the last days. This is the cycle we're in now. We're heading toward the very end of an ice age right now in the return of a vapor canopy. This is just another little flood date deal. That's all I'm doing is showing little flood dates. All right, so I need to go back. So timeline synchronizing with the biblical flood, 2239 BC. There's the right margin right there. Well, look at this. We already know that the 10 patriarchs in Genesis was 1656 years. But the Toltec water sun age, water sun because it came out of a vapor canopy, the water sun age ended after 1,716 years. Now, that's interesting because 52 times 33 is 1716 years, meaning when they got the story that after 33 epochs, the great flood destroyed the world when a vapor canopy collapsed. In their culture, they received the story. It was imported. When they received the story, they couldn't process an epoch being 50 years because that's exactly what 1656 is. 1656 years of Genesis of the pre-flood world divisible by 138 is 50 times 33. And that's when the flood swept over the earth, 1656 years. The Toltecs didn't have a 50-year period. Theirs was the calendar round. It was 52 years. So they took the number 33 and multiplied it by 52. So to them, the pre-flood world was 1716 years. It's just a cultural difference. That's what created the disparity in math. But the disparity is very interesting because it creates a 60-year window, which was important to the Toltec. The Dutch Oerland text, the flood cataclysm, is dated 2184 BC. That's only 55 years off of the true date. Roman historian Marcus Varro dates the flood at 2200 BC, but that was an approximate, and it's 39-year disparity from the true date. The Macedonian historian Callisthenes dates the flood in Babylon to dates the flood and founding of Babylon to 2233 BC. This is a 6-year variant from the true date. Here's 33 jubilees. The flood happened in 33.3 jubilees. There it is right there, which is exactly 414 years plus 414 plus 414 plus 414. 4 cursed earth periods. Each cursed earth period is 138 times 3 to make 1656 years of Genesis. Widely recognized Hebrew date for the flood was 1656, which is 3 phoenix cycles, 552 times 3. 552 is 138 times 4. The Chinese Shu King text dates the flood at 2254 BC. This is a 13-year disparity. The Egyptian historian Manetho wrote that Thoth or Enoch ruled 1570 years. 1570 years, this is an 86-year variance. And Thoth is nothing but the Egyptian Enoch. Enoch lived before the flood. Sumerian record says Enoch ruled 1560 years before the flood. This is a 96-year variance, but this is also a calendrical play because 1560 divided by 12 is 130. And in the book of Jasher, Enoch ruled over 130 kings and princes before he had his people, the Sethites, children of Set, build Akkuzan, which is the Great Pyramid at Giza. But 130 130 is the number found in the Egyptian Coptic records concerning Surid, who ruled over 130 nomes of Egypt before he built the Great Pyramid to warn the world of the coming flood and of another cataclysm in the last days. Every bit of it fits. So, using the chronological statements of the Book of Jasher and Genesis text, Dr. Stephen Jones' Chronology dates the flood at 1656 years. Year 1 being 3895 BC and the flood at 2239 BC. This is just one chart, but you guys have seen my 5 videos on the flood and all the other sources that also date the flood to this exact date. This is 2239 BC. This is Mul-Apen. This is what started. This is the great divide on the Sumerian King List between the kings before and after the flood. Ancient historians and chronologists, using different systems, some counting days and others counting years, came up with the same period. This is irrefutable proof that the shar never meant year. Do you see where all these arrows are pointing? That dark line right there? That dark line is 2239 BC. The Great Flood Vapor Canopy collapse. So we first have 2234 BC, Callisthenes date for the start of Babylon, observations 1903 years before 331 BC, Alexander in Babylon. Source, Rawlinson's 1873, Simplicus and Porphyry. Next, Berosus and Chritodemus wrote duration of Babylonian astronomical observations was 490,000 years, or 1361 years from the start in 3439 BC to 2077 BC. How do we know that it's 1361 years? Because Chritodemus and other ancient Greeks took 490,000 years of the Babylonian astronomers and they divided it by 360. The number of days in an ancient astronomical year, 360, provided the timeline of 1,361 years from the start of Babylon's history to the year 2077 BC, basically when Babylonian observations began. After, you know what 2077 begins? It begins the Mul-Apen period of Babylonian astronomy. So, 2240 BC, Epigenes, according to Pliny the Elder, taught that Babylonian astronomical observations dated back 720,000 years, or 2,000 years from Babel to Berosus. That's amazing. It is amazing. 7,200,000 years divided by 360 days is 2,000. Therefore, Epigenes was dead right. This is the exact period where Babylonian astronomy began. Sumerian King List. After the flood, the first dynasty of Kish was 23 kings ruling 24,510 shars or years. It says mu. The actual word is mu. So ruling 24,510 mu, or 68.0 years. You get that? After the flood, the first dynasty of Kish was 3 kings ruling 68 years. How do we get to 68 years? It's so easy. 24,510 divided by 360. But we don't need to arbitrarily do that. We're going to read the Sumerian King List and see what it shows us. This means the first dynasty of Kish ended in 2171 BC. Babylon was built during the Kish dynasty. This is in the historical record. That's when Babylon came into existence, during the Kish period. 2231 BC. Philobiblis, according to Stephen is historian, Byzantium. Byzantine, how you say it, Constantinople. According to Stephen, dated Semiramis II to the period of the Trojan War, and that Babylon was built 1,002 years earlier. So the fall of Troy being 1229 BC plus 1002 years is 2231 BC. It's pretty close. It's pretty close. The ancients didn't have all the advantages we did, so this is really, really, really close. 2237 BC. Eratosthenes, the chief steward of the Alexandrian library, has the 37th king of Egyptian Thebes, according to Dicearchus, at the end of the Trojan War and 1008 years after the first year of Menes. 1229 BC, fall of Troy, plus 1008 years is 2237 BC. It's all so close. On the bottom, Semiramis II, dated by Herodotus 520 years before the Assyrian revolt of 712 BC, when Sargon II was killed. 520 plus 712 is 1232 BC. This is the 7th year of the Trojan War, plus 1002 years of Philo is 2234 BC. We have now finished the second file. Oh, we got some juicy. See if I got everybody with me still. We are now moving into the actual text of the Sumerian King List. All right, guys. Listen, you guys know that I'm not a creationist, and you also know that I spent the first 40 years of my life as a Southern Baptist Christian. And after reading the entire Bible multiple times, and I have the notes to prove it and the video playlist to show my Dark Scriptures playlist, that I am no longer a believer at all. I believe in the power and integrity of the oversoul. I believe I'm an immortal being. But I'm telling you now, it is very, very compelling that what I'm going to show you in this video, it may have been a hijacking from the original Israelite stock people in order to give the Jewish people a historical pedigree for which they did not belong. But the chronology is exact, and it's very scary, because what I'm going to show you is that the biblical version of the Great Flood in Old Testament, it may be of course it's exaggerated. The whole world wasn't destroyed. It wasn't an ark. It was fleets of arks, and many cultures and people survived. There's a lot of hyperbole injected, but the chronology is precise. It's precise. And what I'm going to show you is crazy because it fits the Sumerian, Akkadian, and Old Babylonian period exactly where in Genesis they are found and not earlier. Academia is absolutely in error, as you will see. And they have to admit they're in error because they're the ones that told us all these facts that we put together. And when you analyze the facts, you realize Kish isn't anywhere where they put it at all in the historical record. So let's get into this. We're in the third file. There's 6 files in this video. We're in the third file. This is going to get really, really compelling. I'm going to increase the size here. I should have done that from the beginning. A body of Sumerian compositions concern the time before Sumer as the world before the flood. It's called the Eridu Genesis. Now, the gods create the black-headed people. These are the Sumerians. They took pride in themselves as being very different than the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki were lapis lazuli-eyed, blue-eyed, and they had long beards. The Sumerians could not grow facial hair. They had black hair and black eyes. They were very prideful people. They called themselves the black-headed people. Now, the stories of Enki and Ninmah, the coming of grain to the people and the coming of the flood. But these are rare fragments. And the main body of Sumerian texts concern the following. Poems. The Epic of Gilgamesh, According to the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, which is ETCLSL catalogs, there are roughly 400 compositions of the Epic of Gilgamesh, the most widely known story in the world. It is the origin of the Nimrod epos. It is the origin of the Hercules traditions, all this. So Gilgamesh and Aga, Gilgamesh and the Bull of Heaven. This is not the zodiacal bull. So many people get that wrong. Ancient Sumer divided the heavens into 4 quadrants. Each quadrant was governed by a royal star. The 4 royal stars made up the cross of the heavens. The cross diagonals made up the base foundation. It's called the foundation of heaven. And it was 4. It was Aldebaran, Fomalhaut, Regulus, 4 royal stars. But they're just the foundation of heaven, because the pole star, which never moved, it's the only star in the sky that does not move. At that time, it was Thuban. Thuban was the chief cornerstone. It was the eye of the dragon, Draconis, the eye of Dracon. The dragon turned in the sky, but its eye never moved, and it looked down on the world. It was the apex of the cosmic pyramid. There was no Sumerian zodiac at that time, at this time. In the early time, it was the 4 corners of heaven concept, the cosmic pyramid, and the whole creation was on a foundation held together by 4 stars, and everybody looked up into the eye of the dragon. This was the ancient concept. So Gilgamesh and the Bull of Heaven means just 1/4 of the heaven, not Taurus, the zodiacal house, as I described in my zodiac videos. So the death of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh in Kaidu and the Netherworld, Gilgamesh in Huwawa, also called Humbara, in Merkar and the Lugal-Banda cycle. Remember I told you about Lugals. I got a video where I explain about the Lugals, the Lugalim. These were the big men. They were bigger than others. And I even showed in one of my videos, there was ancient Sumerian legislation that had to be passed to protect ordinary sized humans from the Lugals, because the Lugals were so huge, so big. They're also shown on like the standard of Ur. You can see the Lugals sitting in their chairs. They're huge and giant compared to the regular Sumerians. But the Lugals, actual laws had to be passed to keep the Lugals in check, because they could just do what they want, take what they want. People were intimidated, so they would sell them their market wares at super cheap prices, and became a tradition to where the Lugals just went everywhere for free. They were like celebrities. But we know that the Lugals were the last of the titans of the pre-flood world. People, after the cataclysm, after the collapse of the vapor canopy, people didn't grow to that size anymore. They were normal human, but they were normal humans who grew up in an environment that later humans only heard stories about. So remember, don't believe that Judeo-Christian bullshit that giants are created. They're hybrids of humans and aliens and angels and fallen angels coming down and that's all Judeo-Christian bullshit. Giantism has always been caused by environment. And the environment changed. We're no longer living in a pre-flood vapor canopy, high pressurized environment. After the flood, it was low pressure. Now the sun is out. Before that, it was ultraviolet sky, a canopy that hid the sun but magnified the moon at night, because the canopy became clear at night. Why? Because the sky was cool. So it became a giant magnification lens that brought the stars closer, made the moon fill 1/4 of the sky. It was like daylight, but the moon served as the sun. And then when the moon was gone, the sun came up, the sky darkened. Why? Because that moisture up there clouded up. And when it clouded up into a thick vapor, only ultraviolet light, a purple light. Native Americans say it was the period of the dark purple light. And it came down, but that purple light was perfect under those atmospheric conditions of high pressure, dense oxygen and nitrogen in the atmosphere. It was perfect because insects, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, that's where we got our megafauna. Everything grew to huge sizes, just like humans did. So the Lugals, like Lugal-Banda, The Lugals were the last of the Titan race still living among the ordinary black-headed people. Now, Lugal Banda was one of them. This is in Markar and the Lugal Banda cycle. This is in Markar and the Lord of Arata, which is the story that tells of the Tower of Babel, the confusion of languages. In Markar had just won a battle, and he is commanding the Lord of Arata, which is in Elam. You need to send kingship back over here. You need to send the statues from the temple back over here, or I'm going to invade you and all that. And the Lord of Arata kept sending messages back. I can't understand anything you're saying. What language is this? And they're going back and forth. This is in Markar and the Lord of Arata. So in Markar and in Sugir Anna, Lugal Banda in the mountain cave, Lugal Banda and the Anzu bird. I need to reread that one. It's been a long time. Lugal Banda and the Anzud bird. I haven't seen it spelled Anzud. It's normally Anzu. But anyway, the flood story, the Eridu Genesis. Then we have Judea. Oh man, do people get this wrong? Man, I've had people in my comment section try to correct me about Judea, especially on Facebook. Oh, Judea was one of the pre-flood kings, Jason. You're wrong. He's dated 3,700 BC. Man, shut up. Shut up. You're going to see Judea was not a pre-flood king. No literature claims that Judea was before the flood. He was after it. So here's the Judea cylinders, the building of Ningersu's temple, royal praise poems, especially for Shulgi of Ur-3 and the Ison kings. You guys remember, I have a video from years ago. I don't remember where it's at, guys. I just don't. I got so many videos where a single cuneiform tablet was found in North America, in the United States. And translators were baffled because the tablet concerned a expedition sent out by King Shulgi of Ur. Here it is right here, Shulgi of Ur, third dynasty. But how a tablet could be dug up in the early 1900s when people were, doing a building project, and they find a tablet in the ground, they have it looked at and examined years later, and come to find out it's talking about Shulgi of Ur sent an expedition out, and that tablet was found in like Tennessee or Ohio or something like that. Got a video about it. It's almost as weird as the Kensington runestone. Now, city laments, the lament of Ur, the lament of Sumer, the lament of Ur, the lamentation texts that describe widespread epic destruction all over, which ended the Sumerian and Akkadian cities. It also ended Sodom and Gomorrah in the cities of the plain. It also ended Mohenjo-Daro, ancient Elam, Mohenjo-Daro, Larak, all these cities in the Harappan Valley. You know what's so compelling about this? Is that the very first underground library that preserved all these stories and all these epics was discovered in our year 1849 AD, Anno Domini. But the destruction described in the lamentation texts of Ur, Sumer, Sodom and Gomorrah and all that, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah happened in 1849 BC. 1849 BC in our Gregorian calendar, which matches the 1849 AD Gregorian date for the discovery of the first library that contained these stories. What's crazy is 1849 BC, when that happened, that massive Sodom and Gomorrah fallout destruction that destroyed these cities for which these lamentation texts were written and described. 1849 BC in the old world's calendar that was being used when that event happened was the Anno Mundi calendar. And in the Anno Mundi calendar, the year was 2046. You can't make this shit up. Cross-calendrical parallels are absolute proof we're not missing any time. We're only missing history. Now, let's go with the next one. The Code of Ur-Nammu, which is the predecessor for the Code of Hammurabi and the Code of Lipit Ishtar. So the text of Akkad all the text of Akkad. You hear about the Akkadian Empire and the cities of Akkad, and you learn all about Sargon of Akkad and then Naram-Sin, his supposed grandson. Yeah. The Akkadian texts don't even cover 40 years of history. Yeah, this massive empire between Sumer and Babylon. Now, in the Archaix chronology, which is taken from a whole bunch of sources, you see Akkad only had a 50-year history. Akkad only had a 50-year history, and then it was wiped out, replaced by Old Babylon. Now, confirming this historical positioning of Akkad is the fact that Akkad is all administrative texts. Yeah, all the Akkadian texts are just administrative, concerning the what was going on in the city and the taxes and weights and measures and laws and municipal stuff. Yeah, the Akkad never produced a large body of literature of all these epics and all these texts. No, they're Sumerian. And then the Sumerian ones went through Akkadian filters to become Old Babylonian. But Akkad itself is almost non-existent in all the tablet libraries. It's like a placeholder historians use. Oh, well, we know there's an Akkad, so we're going to put this here. It's like a placeholder. But Akkad is literally just a transitive period between a falling, decaying, destroyed Sumer and the emergence of a fill. Babylon filled the power vacuum. So that's Old Babylonian period. Then when you get to the Old Babylonian period, you got the Enuma Elish, 7 tablets of creation, the Atrahasis epic, how the flood heroes survived the flood. You have the Era epic about plague after the flood, legends of the kings of Akkad after the flood, the Sargonid text, after the flood, Sargon and Urzababa after the flood, Naram-Sin and the enemy hordes after the flood, which leads us. We just went through all these texts, all these epics, all these collections of writings and stories to get to the Sumerian King List. This is where the trip gets wild. Sumerian King List. Standard translation from the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, citing Weld Blundell Prism, cataloged as WB 444 Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, England. Discovered in 1922 in the ruins of Larsa, the Sumerian King List is a 4-sided prism, dating to the Old Babylonian period, composed after Sumer and Akkad had fallen. Here is what the Sumerian King List reads. After the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu. In Eridu, Alulim became king. He ruled for 28,800 years. Alajar ruled for 36,000 years. 2 kings, they ruled for 64,800 years. Now, for those of you new to my channel, I'm reading these long deals, 64,800 years, and I'm telling you now that is the exact truth. The Sumerian King List did not lie. Unfortunately, the word years is an interpolation, because the actual word is mu. It's a unit of time. Now, this is a transitive period when the shar, which was a pre-flood unit of measurement, is no longer used, but it was remembered. Now, then Eridu fell, and the kingship was taken to Bad Tabira. This was a city of metallurgy. This was like a manufacturing city. In Bad Tabira, Enmeluana ruled for 43,200 years. Galana ruled for 28,800 years. Dumuzi, the shepherd, ruled for 36,000 years. 3 kings, they ruled for 108,000 years. Then Bad-Tabira fell, and the kingship was taken to Larak. It's supposed to be Larak, but this is this version of the king list. In Larag, Zidana ruled for 28,800 years. One king, he ruled for 28,800 years. It's naming the dynasties and how long each dynasty was. Then Larag fell, and the kingship was taken to Sippar. In Sippar, Enmi-Darana became king. He ruled for 21,000 years. One king, he ruled for 21,000 years. Then Sippar fell, and the kingship was taken to Shuruppak. In Shuruppak, Ubar-Tutu became king. He ruled for 18,600 years. One king, he ruled for 18,600 years. In 5 cities, 8 kings. This isn't me. This is the king list. This is the actual translation of the king list. In 5 cities, 8 kings. They ruled for 241,200 years. Then the flood swept over. Pay attention. After the flood had swept over and the kingship had descended from heaven, the kingship was in Kish. Uh-oh. Kish is the first city after the flood. Fact. According to the scribes of the Sumerian city of Larsa, Sumerian history began after the Great Flood and at the city of Kish. Here are the numbers. Here are the numbers of the Sumerian King List and their meanings. Eridu dynasty was 64,800 days. That's a shar. The translators put years, but no one believes a man lived for 64,000 years. It's stupid. Yeah, you need to go watch Billy Carson. That shit don't fly here. Shars are turnings of the stars. As I've already proven in the other chart, the big chart with all the arrows pointing to the center, all of those ancient historians took the long numbers of 720,000 years, 490,000 years, and they divided it by 360, which is turnings of the stars, the ancient year. And that's how they all got their flood date right there around 2200 BC. You can't ignore that data set because that's how historians did it 2,000 years ago. So why shouldn't we do the same thing when it makes sense of the calendar? Look, 64,800 days is only a 180-year dynasty. At Eridu, Bad-Tabira dynasty, which is the manufacturing district, 108,000 days is only a 300-year dynasty. The Larag dynasty at 28,800 days is only an 80-year dynasty. The Sippar dynasty at 21,000 days is only 58.3-year dynasty. Shuruppak dynasty at 18,600 days is a 51.6-year dynasty. The total days is 241,200 turnings of the stars. Divided by 360, it means all five dynasties that ruled over these cities, the five dynastic cities, was 670.0 years. It's perfect. It's perfect. If you want, well, hold on. This means that Sumerian history begins after the flood and after the fall of an 8-king dynasty that ruled 5 cities for 670 years. It is very simple. But if you want some confirmatory data on this, which isn't needed, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. Look at this chart. Proof ancient Jews in Babylon understood Shar reckoning and hid it in the book of Genesis. This was my discovery a couple of years ago. This chart's a couple of years old. I did a video on this chart. Here are the 10 kings of Berosus of Babylon. Here are the 10 patriarchs of Genesis. 1656 years. This is the age of Typhon, the phoenix right here. The 10 kings of Berosus are Olorus, Alaparus, right here on the side. Look, Olorus, Alaparus, what is that? Almilon, Amemnon, Amegalaris, Deonis, Edorancus. I don't know what that is, man. Amemsinus and Ubar Tutu. Did it say Ubar Tutu? What? And then you have the flood hero. This is Xisuthrus. This is your Atrahasis. This is Noah of the book of Genesis, the flood hero. His father is Ubar Tutu. Sounds real close to Ubar Tutu sounds real close to one of the kings on the Sumerian King List. But that's not even what's really compelling. What's compelling here is that Ubar Tutu is said in the Berosus list to have ruled 777 years. No, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Excuse me. What? No. In Genesis, Lamech, which is the father of Noah, which is equal to Ubar Tutu on the Berosus list, Lamech lived 777 years. This is what they put in the 1656 years of the pre-flood world in the book of Genesis. Lamech lived 777 years in the Genesis genealogy, but that perfectly preserves the Shar computation, because 777 years makes Ubar Tutu to be 77.7 years old. Well, not old, but that's how long he ruled. Berosus, the king list, has Ubar Tutu reigning exactly 28,000 shars. Jewish scribes in Babylon in the 5th century BC divided this 28,000 by 360 days, or turnings of the stars, to produce 77.7 years. Then attributed to Lamech, the counterpart of Ubar Tutu, 777 years in the Genesis composition. This means the Jews knew. They knew that these impossible long numbers of the Sumerian and Old Babylonian text had to be divided by 360 to get an accurate time period. They knew. But I've already shown evidence in other texts that they already knew that. They just hid it from the public. So where is my? Here it is again. Here is the Berosus King List right there. There's all the dates, adds up to 432,000 shars. This is the 1,200 years that I showed you on a chart earlier. The Berosus King List deals with from the appearance of the gods to the great flood was 432,000 shars, or turnings of the stars. It's right here. That's what all this is added up together. But it's actually just 1,200 years. Orientalist scholars cite traditions of belief in a great year as a day of 600 years, followed by a night of 600 years for a 1,200-year cycle. This is the origin of the concept of Kali Yuga, Black Age. Yugas were long days and then long nights. So Ashidad of Arabic traditions lived 1,200 years before the flood and built Elam of the columns. Remember in my very first book from 2006, Lost Scriptures of Giza, pyramids were not called pyramids until the days of the Greeks. They were originally called the pillars of the earth, the pillars of heaven, the pillars of the world, and pillars and columns are synonymous. Elam of the columns, Elam is mentioned in the book of Genesis, but Elam of the columns is literally pyramid complex. Elam is the root in the word pyramid. It literally means the Elam of Ad, and the Ad were a race of giants before the flood in Islam. So Arabic traditions. Josephus links 600-year period to the pillars of the Sethites, who built the Great Pyramid complex before the flood. Who were the Sethites? Sethites, they were the children of Set, the children of Set, the children of Typhon, the people who knew the Phoenix knowledge. They knew the calendar of apocalypses and resets. They knew exactly when the first time was going to do. Here is more proof that the 241,200 turnings of the stars of the Sumerian King List was actually 670 years. The yellow ring right here, you see right here, the yellow ring, because this is the Great Flood right here. That's the Great Flood, 2239 BC. The yellow ring is 670 years of the 8 pre-flood kings of Sumerian King List, or their combined 241,200 shards days. The white ring inside of it, you see the white ring? The white ring inside of it are the exact dates that Chinese scholars have the 646 years of the Chinese pre-flood dragon kings. You can't make this shit up. 2 independent cultures, 2 independent chronologies, 2 independent data sets merging perfectly right here, only if you take the 241,000 years that 8 kings ruled and apply the Sumerian interpretation of turnings of the stars, and you get 670 years until the Phoenix destroyed the world. In the 670th year, Phoenix destroyed everything. And the first civilization to emerge out of this ruin was Kish, the very first Sumerian city. Oh, it's going to get deeper, guys. It's going to get deeper. Going to get deeper. Let's continue on. It's going to get deep. Yeah, man, here's 670 years right here. Here's the pre-flood world. There's the Great Flood, the big yellow one. 670 years of the Sumerian King List. 7 kings of Anunna, 670 years. That 670-year period happened several times in history, which is what gave Nostradamus his data. Nostradamus knew what he was talking about. Here's the 10 kings of Chaldea from an old book. 432,000 years, which is 1,200. It's just 1,200 years. But we've got whole videos on that 1,200-year period. We don't need to beat ourselves up with that. I'm not going to go into the Yugas right now. Oh, okay. Here's another old book from this is the Chronologist from 1753. I did 2 videos on this book. I can't remember his name. 1753. He was a world-renowned chronologist. Anyway, he said, Berosus wrote his chronology by the computation of Sari, Neri, and Sosi. This is SARS and NERS, and I don't know what these are. Now, which being ancient measures of time and well known when the original records were written, could not, it is conceived, have wanted explanation in those records. But Berosus or some later writers have either out of ignorance or design magnified these measures of time beyond all imagination and tell us that the SARS, this is SHARS, that the SARS contained the interval of 3,600 years, the NERS of 600 years, and the SOSAs, I don't know what that is, SOSAs of 60 years. However, other authors have taken those years for days only. This isn't the subject matter of this video. My Archaix veterans already know. I've already proven my case that the years in ancient texts were actually references to days. These were day count systems. And they blame Eusebius for not perceiving them to be days. We'll get to that in a minute. Nostradamus, the lost manuscript, he literally said, many will die before the Phoenix dies. Until 670, his dwelling shall endure. He could have said, many will die before the Phoenix dies until the end of the 8 kings of the Sumerian King List, when Typhon comes and destroys them. He could have reworded it and said the same thing. It could have said the exact same thing right there. Now, this is a video I did a few years ago. This is pre-flood history before the construction of the Great Pyramid. Oh, we're not done with Kish. Still got some awesome shit. I wanted to show this because people don't realize how much history we do have. All these dates represent, this whole entire chart represents this 817-year window right here before this blank spot. Do you know why this is blank right here? All of these historical events happened, listed all over this entire chart. All these historical events. All these calendars started, all these constructions in this 817 years of the pre-flood world from 3725 BC to 2908 BC. This is a massive amount of shit. I packed it all into one video describing all these events in this 817-year window. But the reason the period behind it is blank is because that's your 670 years to the flood. That's your new dynasty. This is what changed the world. And a lot of ancient historians believed it's the period that caused the Great Flood. Why the Great Flood was necessary, I don't know. But this blank period is the 670 years of the 8 kings of the Anunnaki, not Sumerian cities, not Sumerian kings, but a different race, one that was later demonized. But this blank area is the 670 years to the flood, and this is the Great Flood. Now, for anybody doubting that these long, impossible epics are actually days, you have to understand this is already put back together the history of India. Yeah, the Hindu and Puranic yugas were never years. All this was a day count system. And that's why these impossibly long dates, look at that. Everything's divisible by 108,000. 108,000 plus 108,000 is there's your Sumerian Ner, 216,000. 2 Ner is 432,000. The ancient Vedic system was nothing but a post-reset memory of the earlier Ner period of the Anuna. 600-year Ners. This is the 3,000 years of the Archaix chronology from 5239 BC to the Great Flood. This is exactly 1,080,000 days, 3,000 years. This is the period that ancient historians claim was 3,000 years. There's a Zoroastrian tradition holds that the original creation was the first age of 4 and lasted 3,000 years. Theopompus wrote that the Magi told him that the new god appears every 3,000 years. Herodotus received it from Egypt that the metempsychosis of the world was every 3,000 years, also claimed by Servius in the 4th century. Here's your 3,000 years. It's 5 Ner. These are your original yugas. Every yuga is based off of Sumerian mathematics. Every single one. Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, the Vapara Yuga, and the Kali Yuga. The Kali Yuga is actually the memory of the Sumerian period from the appearance of the Anunnaki to the Great Flood, 432,000 turnings of the stars, or 2 Ner, as you see down here. Now, I've already got videos on all this. This is just a recap for those who think that all this stuff hasn't already been figured out. It has. The Anuna-Ner chronology of great years is perfectly seen in the historical events. It was recorded. It was known by ancient authors. It was so well attested. I've got a couple of videos that just give you nothing but lists of historical citations of all the ancient authors who remembered a 600-year epic. 216,000 days. The base denominator in Sumerian, later Babylonian, and Puranic Hindu texts. Remember, the oldest text, the Aryan text of ancient India are the Vedas, and there isn't a hint of the yugas in the Vedas. But the later Hindu texts have all kinds of stuff about the Vedas, about the yuga periods. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that because you see this white circle? This is the Archaix chronology right here. All different types of calendrical systems. You just can't make this shit up. There is no way this could have been invented by me. All I'm doing is putting the pieces together and everything fits. That white circle starts 5239 BC. That is 3,000 years to the Great Flood, 2239 BC, before the Sumerian city of Kish appeared. That white circle is history before Kish ever appeared in the historical record. And that white circle ends at the Great Flood. This is the 4 Yuga ages forming what's called the Mahayuga, or the Great Cycle. In the Hindu writings, the Mahayuga is 1,080,000 years. But really, it's just 5 Ner, which is 1,080,000 days. It's 3,000 years from 5239 BC start of Anuna Ner chronology to the great Typhon flood of Noah in 2239 BC that ended the 1200-year period, 432,000-day Black Age, or Kali Yuga. This being Mahayuga means Great Flood was an end and a beginning in world cycles. This is what the Chinese believed. They believed that the flood ended the reign of the Dragon Kings, and that the flood itself was a major division in time. And they dated at the exact same time. Like I said, you just can't make this shit up, guys. I don't have the intelligence to make all this up. I don't have the intelligence to put together 10,000 different mathematical data points taken from old books and put it all into one synthetic timeline. No, I have the intelligence, which is average, to put it all together with a calculator. It's so easy that I find, and then I share it with you. But in order to invent all these things and then show you actual references from history of the actual numbers, it would be impossible. I can only show you what I find, and what I find all fits perfectly. But we're not done. We got to continue. We still got ground to cover. That was file number 3. We have 5 files. I said 6, but we got 5 files. We are now at file number 4. And I need to be able to see this file. Hold on. Y'all bear with me. There we go. There we go. All right. All right. I told you, we had some aha moments here, guys. I'm telling you, man. So profound. Sharing my screen again. Archaix veterans already know. I already know you're going to watch this again. I just know. You're going to have to. You're going to have to, guys. It's so compelling. Next phase. After the flood, Kish dynasty begins Sumerian history. Remember, it's critical to understand. There's no argument among Assyriologists and Sumerologists. There's no argument with historians. I'm not making all this up. Kish begins Sumerian history. Kish begins Sumerian chronology. But by the documents of the ancient world, Kish didn't appear in the historical scene until after the flood. This is the Sumerian King List that we have a copy of today. Kish did not enter into the historical record till after the flood. These are the cities and places where the oldest cuneiform libraries were found. Kish, Uruk, Elam, These 4 places are the very oldest of all the texts. Now, we know they were misdated by uniformitarian principles way further back in history than they belong. But that's okay. Let's go through the facts. Here's fact number 1. According to the Sumerian King List, the 8 antediluvian kings reigned for a total of 200 years. We know it's 670 years. Fact number 2. These pre-flood kings reigned 670 years. Using this exact same day count formula, we review the king list for after the flood. I'm about to expose to you why Assyriologists and Sumerologists and Near Eastern scholars pushed back the dates all the way back to 3500 BC. They had to, because they were still thinking these numbers were talking about years, and they couldn't process how all these kings could have ruled this long from Kish afterward. But when you go by the method the Sumerians went, the day count system, what unfolds is amazing. Fact, after the flood, kingship first appeared at Kish. First dynasty of Kish, 24,510 days, is only 68.0 years. Fact, after Kish was defeated, kingship was removed to Uruk. First dynasty of Uruk, 2,310 days, is only 6.4 years. Fact, after Uruk fell, kingship then went to Ur. First dynasty of Ur was only 171 days that Ur was actually able to hold power. Fact, after Ur fell, kingship was relocated to Elam, the city of Awan. Kingship remained there 356 days. Fact, from Elam, kingship is returned to Kish. Second dynasty of Kish, 3,195 days, is 8.8 years. 8.8 years is a long time in the ancient world. Now, fact, from Kish, again, kingship went to Hamazi for 360 years. This is actually 1 year. It's 360 days, 1 year. Fact, from Hamazi, kingship was returned to Uruk. This is the second dynasty of Uruk, 187 days. Fact, from Uruk, kingship was taken back to Ur, second dynasty of Ur, 108 days. So, then the kingship goes to Adab, 90 days. Then the kingship to Mari, 136 days. Then the kingship to Kish. This is the third dynasty of Kish. It was 100 days. Kingship at Akkad is only 99 or 93 days. Kingship to Kish again. This is the fourth dynasty of Kish. It's only there for 491 days. Kingship at Uruk, third dynasty of Uruk, is only 25 days. Kingship to Akkad is either 195, 196, or 197 days. It varies in different translations. Conclusion. The total for post-flood years from start of the Kish dynasty to the start of the Akkad dynasty was exactly 89 years, or 32,060 days. Do you know what kingship was? Do you actually know what kingship was? During this period of time, the one who possessed kingship had the favor of the gods, but he couldn't have the favor of the gods unless he had a statue of the goddess. A very ancient statue of the goddess is what gave the king kingship. And in the temple, he would protect the temple and he would fortify it. And in the ancient world, when you read the descriptions of the transference of kingship, it's because one city stole the idol from another city and they put it up and then they protected it. It's like a fucking game. All over, everybody's vying to get that artifact and be able, it's probably a pre-flood statue. But that was kingship. Kingship was an artifact, and some believe it was an artifact of the goddess, and that it was moved from city to city to city to city. Archaeologists and historians, not quite understanding the concept, saw that kingship kept returning to different places. But when it says in the Sumerian kingship, when it says in the Sumerian king list that kingship was dropped and given to such and such, it's because it was handed down. And it was the handing down of that artifact that gave that receiver divine authority. So what did other people want to do? They wanted to take it because they wanted the divine favor. In the entire history of the ancient Near East after the flood was warring kingdoms and tribes, all vying for position until one bad mamma jamma emerged out of the ranks. And for 50 years, he held down the fort. And this is the story of Sargon of Akkad. And it's what stopped all this all this nonsense. Sargon the Great, Sharakin was his actual throne name. But Sargon stopped that madness for a 50-year period. So 89 years. 89 years. Do you know what mystery this also solves? When I started this video, I told you guys that it doesn't make sense that 13 centuries of 13 centuries of underground libraries and the contents of the libraries themselves only cover 40 and 50-year administrative windows. The administrative, when I'm talking about the epics, talking about what happened in ancient times and Atrahasis epic, Era, Epos, Lamentation, we're not talking about that. We are talking about the administrative records for each library. Each city only covered 40 to 50 years for each library. It doesn't make sense. Under the model that Kish is 3500 BC and all the Sumerian cities are 34, 33, 30, 29, 27. None of that makes sense because it puts it puts centuries between all these little administrative periods. But doesn't it make sense now when you find out that, holy shit, starting with Kish, all the way to Sargon stopping all that madness, and all the way to the rise of Sargon the First, born as a little baby, put in a basket on a river, rescued by Enaitu priestess. His backstory was specifically created to make it look like he's the real inheritor of kingship. Why? Because kingship was designed to serve the goddess. He was rescued by an Enaitu priestess. This is the story, the backstory for Sargon the First. It's invented, but it's a politicized story in order to show that he was destined for the role of kingship. Because when he was a baby, he was on a basket, meaning he was born of the gods. No one knew who his father was, but he was rescued by a priestess of the goddess. This is his story. He legitimized his kingship. And this is the story of Akkad. And this is why Akkad has never really made sense. It's just an interjection in between Sumerian and Old Babylonian history. So anyway, let's move on. Now that you understand that Kish to Akkad is only 89 years, every one of those 40 and 50-year administrative deals makes sense. Even because a bunch of them, they all overlap because the cities existed at the same time. At the same time. Everything fits perfect. Once you realize the great Typhon flood is what ended the pre-flood civilizations. It ended the reign of the 8 kings. Ended that reign. They're gone. 2239 BC, the great month of May, the Mul-Apen destruction. And shortly after that, Kish is the first Sumerian city, and then other cities start off, and then they start vying for the favor of the goddess. They start vying for kingship. Now, so that we're completely clear, the academic dating built off of assumptions of slow development, script evolution, imagined associations to Egyptian long chronology, now known to be false, has them dating Kish and other later cities. So this is the Kish chart. We've already seen that chart. I showed that chart earlier. It says show the Kish A chart. We've already seen that chart. We have a new chart to look at. But by applying the day count system of the Sumerian King List to the date for Mul-Apen, the great destruction of the 2200 BC, and the well-documented Typhon flood of 2239 BC, Kish and later Sumerian cities are dated after the flood. Well, let's look and see what that looks like. Chart time. Kish is the key to accurately dating Sumerian chronology. All right. This is not the first chart. This is a totally different chart. It's only got the same title. Yellow box. Applying the Sumerian day count system of the King List for the pre-flood dynastic periods to the post-flood Kish and later dynasties completely answers for why only 1% of the 200,000 plus cuneiform tablets were thought to date from 3500 to 2200 BC. A mistake. Putting those Kish, Uruk, Larsa, Nippur, and later text after the flood, Mul-Apen disaster of 2239 BC shows us that cuneiform was a post-reset method of communication developed after the Typhon flood of 2239 BC caused by the Phoenix. Yellow era, this is Sumerian and Akkadian civilization right here. That's the yellow. That's where it belongs. This is what it dates itself at. 2238 to 1800 BC is a 438-year period. That is a long period of time for a lot to happen. Remember, we're not talking about 8 people surviving in an ark. That's a Judeo-Christian story. It's not the original. Arks, fleets of arks, people in mountains, people in underground facilities. Hundreds of thousands, millions of people survived the Great Flood. They just survived because the Great Flood wasn't worldwide. Now, white box. Kish is the beginning of Sumer and later Akkad, but it is positively dated after the Great Flood of 2239 BC, Mul-Apen event. The kings mentioned in all the oldest Sumerian records dated to these early periods, like Meshkian-Gashur, Enmerkar, Lugal-Banda, Gilgamesh, Judea of Lagash, Sargon, Naram-Sin, are all told in the cuneiform to have lived after the flood. You read all these books on the Near East, you see all this artwork from these periods, you hear all these amazing names in Enmerkar, Meshkian-Gashur, Lugal-Banda, Gilgamesh, Gudea or Judea. You hear all about these people, and they sound like pre-flood histories and all that. But according to the Near Eastern narratives, every one of these kings were after the flood. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. So, even Mesopotamia's oldest astronomical dating. You know, the oldest astronomical dating in Mesopotamia are the Venus almanacs. But the Venus almanacs only date the reigns of kings after Hammurabi. And he was a king that ruled way after the flood. Yeah, process that. So before you go to thinking, Jason, you're wrong. All academia has it right. There's got to be something you're missing. You have to understand, even academia has no astronomical records to go by. There's nothing. Even the Venus almanacs can't date anything before Hammurabi. So all these dates 1,000 and 1,400 years before Hammurabi, they're all speculative. They're all speculative. But in order to claim that Kish doesn't come when I'm putting it on this chart after the Great Flood, you would have to go through the entire Great Flood debate. Yeah. Anybody wants to challenge the dating, I'm up for the debate. I'm up for the challenge. If you don't believe the Great Flood of biblical chronology and world chronology was in 2239 BC, that's a debate. Because I promise you, I will overwhelm you with data and sources. My Archaix community already knows that. I have so much on that date, chronologically, textually, traditionally, in myths and legends, and scientifically. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So many people believe the Great Flood was the Younger Dryas. It doesn't matter. Between now and the Younger Dryas, there may have been 10 floods. But the Great Flood of biblical fame and worldwide traditions was this date here, which means Kish had to be after. It had to be after it. Yeah, I tell you guys all the time, they push things back too far. Even Göbekli Tepe is pushed back way too far. They just don't want to undo the fact that they've already bought into the uniformitarian model. Oh, we're not done though. I got more charts, new charts. But I'm just entertaining a tangent. We can never go by this bullshit of these dates that push back these Sumerian cities this far back. Sumerian texts do have myths and legends about Enki and Ninhursag and all that go further back, but they're not. Yeah, they don't have anything. They don't date to those periods. That's my point. They just don't date to those periods. So we have finished the fourth file, and we are now into the final file. This is it, guys. And the final file only has 2 charts, so we are just about done. No overkill here. I just want to stay on topic. And I got a birthday function to get to pretty fast. Yeah, man. Archaix vets, love your new charts. I already gave you two new charts. Here's 2 more. So, advent of is that cuneiform? I don't know how to say that. Writing a post-cataclysm innovation. Big yellow. You see the big old yellow circle here, right there. That's the post-cataclysm historical record preserved by writings of extant cultures, meaning the cultures that were existing wrote their own histories at this time, and their writings are dated to this period. It's all here in the yellow. The little yellow circle right there, that's when Sumer began, Akkad, Babylon, Assyria, Elam, Egypt, China. That little circle. They don't go back to this period. Just because there are pyramids back here in North Africa does not mean these civilizations were here. Excuse me, 2239 BC, Mulapan destruction and the Typhon flood separated epochs of the world, because the civilizations that left us this gigantic megalithic architecture and all that, that's back here during this vapor canopy period in between 3895 BC and 2239 BC. We know it as the antediluvian world. It's when the seven and the 8 kings of the Anunnaki ruled of the king list. But there was no Sumer back then. Sumer remembers the period through tradition. There was no Akkad back then, no Babylon, no Assyria, no Elam, no Egypt, no China. In fact, the evidence is that the Sumerians came from somewhere else, and that there was another culture there before they were, called the Ubaid, and they were very weird. They worshipped lizards in the form of humans. But that's topic of another discussion. So this yellow circle is 2200 to 500 BC. Tablets of Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, Assyria, Syria, Hittite, Mari, Elam, and Amarna. That's this yellow right here. Thank you, Ace. That's this yellow right here. Do you see all these other yellow arrows? Because it's inside this big yellow circle that we have. The Vedic texts date to 1400 BC at their earliest. Hesiod, Homer, Theognis, the ancient Greeks date to 800 BC at their earliest. The Hindu text and the Puranic text, 500 BC at their earliest. 300 BC is the corpus of the Old Testament books, Alexandrian Library, at its earliest. 200 AD is the corpus of the New Testament books at its earliest, right here. This is the time period of the human historical record. This is everything we know about history was from this period right here. Although there are some fragments and traditions about what happened in the pre-flood world, which in our case, we have been able to put together fantastically. Now, this leads us to the final chart of our analysis. At the top, you have every right to call into question anyone's mental health who would actually consider 9600 BC as an accurate Atlantis dating. Oh yeah, I'm gonna twist the dagger. Pursuant to this new data on Sumer, yeah, it makes the Atlantis story even more ridiculous, because there's your big yellow circle for the post-cataclysm historical record preserved by writings of extant cultures. Here it is right here till today. And here's the little yellow circle from which all these civilizations began. Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, Assyria, Elam, Egypt, and China. So Here's Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson, Matt LaCroix, Billy Carson, Jimmy Corsetti, and I'm finding a whole lot of new names lately that all hold to this model that Atlantis, which fought the city of Athens, is way back here at 9,600 BC. How can you be that moronic? There's no way these men are that stupid. These men are equally as intelligent as I. There is no way that these men are this moronic. Can't be. False Atlantis dating based off a misunderstanding of Say's lunar reckoning. 9,600 BC puts Atlantis 8,200 years before the founding of Athens, who the Atlanteans are fighting in the story. How do you fight Athenians in the Ice Age when their civilization didn't even begin till 8,000 years later? How did that happen? How did that happen? And what's really embarrassing is that 8 ancient authorities, all of them I've cited, and no one to date has ever overturned my Atlantis data. They can't. I pulled it straight out of the historical record. 8 ancient authorities all wrote that the Egyptians counted their years as a 30-day period. And this puts Atlantis exactly in the 13th century BC with Athens. So, pursuant to the new Sumerian data, everything fits right here on this side of the Typhon flood, because the other side of the Typhon flood, in my opinion, was a technologically advanced infrastructure. We built the Great Pyramids. We built all kinds of things we don't even understand today. And those technological artifacts that are being demonstrated all across social media that people have been finding for 50, 60 years from Russia all the way to the United States, they're fossils and pieces that are left over from the pre-Typhon period. That's my final chart. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm gonna post all this data in the underground today. I'll post some of it on X. I'll post all the charts later. I have to go to a birthday. It's Franny's birthday. She's like 93. I gotta go. I know she's laughing. She's only 83, but I know she's listening. Probably cussing me out right now. But guys, Cypher, you got 3 days. And for those of you who don't know, Cypher is date sequence predictive analytics software. It's blowing my mind what we're doing with it. We got well over 700 people involved. We got 20 new people. Doors close in 3 days. But date sequence predictive analytics software is based off of the Archaix research. It's based off the fact that everything is measured in days. Yeah, that's what my software does. It's badass. It's pretty much fully developed, and people are using it for all kinds of shit. But this day count system, that's the hallmark of my research in human antiquities. The ancients measured everything forward and backward in time by units of days. They really didn't give a damn about years. Now, I got to go. Much love to you. And I'll see you guys later on X and in the underground. Chat Tuesdays tomorrow in the underground. We do 3-hour lives in underground every Tuesday. I think I'm gonna do a Q. I don't have anything prepared for this week, so I'm gonna we'll just have people on. For those of you in underground, just come on the screen and we'll just shoot the shit or Q&A or whatever in the underground tomorrow. But meanwhile, since we were talking about Atlantis and one of my personal heroes I have a deep and abiding respect for.
Jimmy. Oh, Jimmy. You thought you could hide in the sands of time. But the truth's coming down like a phoenix fire from Archaix. The hammer falls. spin your web of lies, claiming Atlantis rose there under desert skies. But Plato's words are twisted in your grifter's game. 9600 BC, man, that's just lame. You run from debates like a coward in the night. Hancock's your buddy, but you both ain't right. Younger Dryas' dreams all crashing down while you're chasing views in your conspiracy town. Göbekli Tepe, you lie about the stones. Pottery dates left them buried like bones. Unfinished pillars, backfilled in haste. Cataclysm hit, but you call it a waste. You get so upset when the facts come to light. Personal attacks, yeah, you're spoiling for a fight. Accusing folks of faking cancer, that's low. But Archaix is here, stealing the show. Jimmy upset, oh, you burn it out. Grifter in the desert, full of doubt. Chill for the masses, pushing Nazi shit. But the truth from Archaix, it's a perfect hit. Run, Jimmy, run from the debate stage. Your theories crumble in the simulated cage. Upsetting spaghetti, tangled in your lies. The world's waking up, saying goodbye. Billy Carson's crew, Randall's wild ride. You all huddle up, but there's nowhere to hide. Matt McGraw whispers, Bible draws the lines, but your star alignment's just wasting our time. David Axe echoes Sitchin's old tales. You peddle the fiction while the real data prevails. Peary reads maps, you claim Ice Age art, but no metal plates, no ancient hearts. Sensational clicks, that's your only fuel, while Archaeologists drop bombs, making you look the fool. Joe Rogan's couch, you'd sell your soul to sin, but the purge is coming and you're caught in it. You get so upset when the chronos unwind, looped in the matrix, leaving you behind. Call out the cowards from Carson to Bragg. Archaix is rising, cracking your egg. Jimmy upset, oh, you're burning out. Grifter in the desert, full of doubt. Chill for the masses, pushing Nazi shit. But the truth from Archaix, it's a perfect hit. Run, Jimmy, run from the debate stage. Your theories crumble in the simulated cage. Upsetty spaghetti, tangled in your lies. The world's waking up, saying goodbye. Oh, Jimmy, why'd you have to go so low? Faking the facts, stealing the show. From the Sphinx's gaze to the Zodiac's lie, your empire's falling, no alibi. Archaix roars with the napalm truth, burning your bridges, exposing the proof. No more hiding in your bright insight veil. The simulation's glitching. Your story's
Bye.